Resolution and the Budget and Impoundment Acts. Okay, so make sure that you understand those. Next, which is really important, is what's a midterm election? An election in between presidential elections for the purpose of electing, Charlie, stay with me, bud, for the purpose of electing members of Congress, right? Because how often must every House member be elected? Every 2 years, and then every 2 years, what are we doing with the Senate? About a third of them, right? So here, now that we know what midterms are, you need to tell me what happened or the importance of the 1994 and 2006 midterms. 1994, Charlie, sit up, bud. All right, 1994 and 2006 midterms. Exactly, and that's the one I'm going to give you, okay? Because she said Republicans, and I'm going to explain it in a different way, so maybe the wording will be more what we, not you. By taking back power, what do you mean, Allie?
Like they gave the majority.
Right, so...
First time in a long time. Both.
Yeah, in a good bit of years, yes. Okay, so who becomes president in 92? That's Clinton. 88's Bush. Daddy Bush is 88. Okay? So in 92, Clinton becomes president, and he has a unified government. What does that mean? Both majority parties of Congress are the same party as the president. So what does he get done from 92 to 94? A lot. And then what happens in 1994, in the midterm election? The majority party goes back to the Republicans in Congress, and because of that overwhelming change in Congress, then what happens in our government? Because nothing gets done, and what do we call nothing getting done in government? Because gridlock, right? So this idea of gridlock is important to understand. Know the 94 midterm and then 2006. So
I still don't get what the importance of
the importance is America's inclination to going back to what?
You're going back to
going back to a divided government. Okay? So what happened in 94? The majority party overwhelmingly changed from the Democrats to the Republicans in Congress in response to how much the president got done from 1992 to 1994. Is the exact same situation that happened in 2008 to 2010? Yeah. Exactly the same. Obama comes in 2008. He gets a ton done with the unified government, and then in 2010, what happens? America votes in the midterm election, and at least one chamber of Congress goes back to the Republicans. Okay? Because we know that what is really the point of our legislature and executive branch and checks and balances is to create a government that is what? Not balanced, but...
Divided.
Well, the American people have the choice to make it divided, but by all these checks and balances and separation of powers and different chambers in Congress, and if there is change, how does it happen? Very slowly and deliberate, okay? That's important to get. So look at 2006 and what happens, and 94 we already talked about. What's the difference between oversight and investigative powers of Congress? Because I didn't talk about this enough.
The investigative powers are allowed to look into different actions, right?
Yeah, but pretty much anything. Investigative is to investigate something, right? Like to investigate an oil spill, to investigate steroids in baseball, to investigate the importance of, or to investigate, any type of thing. But what oversight is, the difference maybe is easier to explain oversight. Oversight is the ability of the legislative branch to watch over what they've created, because if it's not working properly, what do? Change it through legislation and fix it through legislation, or if they're really mad at it, or if they think it's really incompetent, then what can Congress do after the oversight? Get rid of it. They think that the Federal Elections Commission, which is the FEC, not a good example because that's an independent agency that Congress doesn't have much control over, but let's say FEMA, Federal Emergency Relief, whatever FEMA stands for, Federal Emergency Management Association. So when really bad things happen in America, Charlie, then what happens? FEMA takes over. Well, if we find through oversight that FEMA, if the legislative branch finds that FEMA that deals with emergencies really, really sucks and doesn't work, what could they do? They could get rid of it. They could say, through our oversight, we've learned FEMA is terrible and doesn't do anything, and it's a waste of money, so we're going to get rid of it. All right? They could cut it out. Yeah, because they created it, they could cut it out. All right? And then remember, the job of the president is to enforce it. Whatever the legislation is. Okay? So understand that. What's the franking privilege? Just as a reminder.
Send mail.
The ability of
Sending free mail.
members of Congress to send free mail. And that leads to their exceptionally high incumbency rates in re-election. Which chamber has the highest incumbency rates?
The House.
The House, right, Charlie? Okay. Impeachments, we understand where they begin. Which chamber of Congress? House. And then where's the trial happen? In the Senate. Can all members, or not all, can most members of the federal government be impeached besides the president? Yes. Impeachment is not a solely presidential thing. Okay, other people could be impeached as well. All right?
McCarthy impeached?
Joseph?
Yeah. Red scare all that jazz?
No, he was on trial, and I forget what happened to him after because
I think he was brought forth in an investigative committee,
Yeah, he was.
but I don't think he actually was ever removed from office. I think, but I'd have to look. Okay, and then do not forget what I've said to you about Baker versus Carr. What's Baker versus Carr? What does it deal with? The idea of you really, guys, if you want to study one big chunk of thing that's going to help you possibly, is study that whole idea of redistricting, reapportionment, gerrymandering, and Baker Carr goes right along with that. And what does the Supreme Court say about what?
Reapportionment.
Not reapportionment, but redistricting. When redistricting has to be based on population. Okay? That's Baker versus Carr. That redistricting has to be based solely on population. Okay? So understand that. Okay, now I'm on to the notes. Each of these little blue pieces of paper is a different piece of paper that deals with one day of notes. So this is an email I sent you. And I've sent you 6. I will send you the 7th one today. That's 7 days of notes, 7 days of chunked material of all the things that we've covered in an email each. Okay, so now I'm on the first day of notes, the first email that I sent out going over some important things. Like the difference between a congressional term and a congressional session.
Session is 1 year, a term is every re-election.
A session is 1 year, a term is 2 years, and it's backed up by elections. Right, exactly. Okay, what about Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution? What do they deal with? Legislative, executive, and judicial in that order. Okay, make sure you know that. We know, some of this stuff's getting pretty repetitive, and I understand that, but it's good. Because by the end of the year, it'll be like boom, boom, boom. Bicameral means what? 2 chambers, right? And we know that our 2 chambers of our legislature are what and what?
House and Senate.
House and the Senate, yes. Although it is not solely super duper important anymore, but if you have one quality in Congress to have power, what's the quality that you want to have in reference to Congress? Seniority, right? You want to be a senior ranking member. And if you're a senior ranking member, you have more power. Okay, Charlie? Can we sit up, bud? If you put your arms like that, you're going to fall asleep. I promise you. If you rest your head on your hands, it's fall asleep count. Okay? I hope Roderick didn't give you his... You guys know Roderick?
Roderick? I don't know Roderick, I don't know Igor, I don't know any.
Roderick is in our English class, and I don't think he's heard one word Mr. Barton has said.
Oh yeah, he sleeps through the whole thing. We clapped one time when he stayed awake to give a
Except
presentation.
yesterday he woke up, and Mr. Barton asked
Roderick
him if
is
he
like...
had started
I scream, and Roderick is like this. Like, I'm like, what are you doing? Like...
We talk about him sleeping.
Honors or
Class.
AP?
Okay, what?
We talk about him sleeping to him, and he doesn't. He
Well, just like Sleepy.
No, Sleepy's not as bad as Roderick. Roderick passes out.
Yeah.
Roderick's like he's back in his bed.
What?
I recently learned his medical.
Okay. Anyhow, moving on. Okay. So, all right. Now you need to understand all the different committees that we've talked about. The types of committees. Standing committees are what?
They exist all the time.
Permanent committees that are always in existence that study a certain type of legislation. Okay. So make sure you get that. Well, what about conference committees?
Committees between both chambers.
They are a type. What do we call a committee that has members of both chambers? That's another one. Joint committees. But a conference committee is a specific type of joint committee that does what? When a bill goes through the House and the Senate, and if it's different at all, to reconcile the differences, the conference committees are formed to reconcile the differences between House and Senate versions of bills. So we got standing committees always in existence. We got joint committees that have members of the House and the Senate. We have conference committees that reconcile the differences between bills. And then the other one would be select committees, which is another word. Select is another word for investigative, right? That study something for a short period of time and then usually go away. Okay, does that make sense? So understand all of those different types of committees. We know what incumbents are, right? People that already hold the political office. We know what a constituency is, right? The people that you represent as a politician, okay? We know that the Senate terms are staggered, so all the time we're re-electing some senators, but not all senators. What's the importance of the 17th Amendment?
Direct election.
Direct election of senators. When we became a country, when we became a country under the Constitution in 1789, who usually chose who the senators would be in a state? State legislatures. And the 17th Amendment, which was 1913, I believe, changed the Constitution for the 17th time, saying that people would directly elect senators. So, who are the directly elected people at the federal level?
Congress.
All of Congress. Yeah, House and Senate, right? Where presidents are elected through the Electoral College, which is indirect, and all federal judges in the judicial branch are appointed, which is not a direct election. Okay? So understand that. What's the biggest importance of the Reapportionment Act of 1929?
How many districts your state has based on the population?
It caps the House of Representatives at 435 members. That's the biggest, most important thing. That when reapportionment is done, we are not going to add any more districts to the country. 435 is it, and then you get your portion of 435. Okay? The importance of which chamber of Congress is the census important to?
The House.
The House, right? Because population matters in the House. So that census that happens every 10 years, it's written in the Constitution and it must be done. And the reason it must be done is for the House of Representatives so that they can make sure that it's equal with each district size. Okay?
So after you go to the state, it's going to get its senators, but it won't get a specific.
It will, because it'll still get its portion.
Yeah, but it won't get they won't make more seats for it.
No, unless the legislation is changed. Okay? So we know what gerrymandering is. What's gerrymandering?
When you draw districts.
When you redistrict in such a way that you are benefiting a political party or a group of some sort. Okay? So understand what gerrymandering is, and understand that the importance of Baker versus Carr in reference to that. Know the difference between reapportionment and redistricting. Reapportionment is how many what each state gets. Districts. Reapportionment is after the census deciding how many districts each state gets. What's redistricting? When you redraw the lines. So super duper understand that stuff. Okay, reapportionment, redistricting. Yes, sir.
Do they redistrict without reapportionment?
Well, they're both done every 10 years. But if you stay the same amount of House members, So if when reapportionment happens, you keep the same number of members of the House, you still have to redistrict depending upon where the population lies. But usually those shifts aren't that big because Miami's not going to change that much compared to the other areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like all of a sudden everybody's going to move to Tallahassee and we're going to have to redistrict Tallahassee into 26 chunks. You know what I mean? Okay, so if you were to say like the demographics of the Senate, like the type of people, what would you say?
Old white.
Old white male, usually wealthy, right? You see more diversity in the House of Representatives. Currently, what's the majority party in the chambers of Congress?
The House is
Senate is
Republican,
Democrats.
Senate is Democrats, House is Republicans, okay? We know the plight of minorities in the Senate is what? Yeah, it sucks to be a minority, right? 5 or 6 of them for almost every major, not gender, every major ethnic group or race or whatever, any of those things. Yeah, good. So then we have to understand the hierarchy of power in Congress. Who's the top dog, if we were to pick one? The Speaker. Speaker first, right? Like all of Congress, not just the Senate. So then who comes next? President of the Senate. And what do we know about the President of the Senate? It's the Vice President of the United States. Then who comes next? The President Pro Temp. And what do we know about them? Longest serving member of the majority party. We gave several examples of that, right? And then who comes after? Yes.
I'll wait till you go.
Who comes after President Pro Temp? The majority leaders, right? And then who comes after the majority leaders? The majority whips, or you could put minority leaders there. It just kind of depends. Like, that's not going to be like somebody's going to hold you to that like perfect ladder of hierarchy, okay? But you either would put the majority whips or the minority leaders. And then after the minority leaders, the minority whips. And then after the minority whips, the committee chairman first. The committee chairman and then everyone else, okay? Regular serving members, okay? So make sure you understand that hierarchy and then the tidbits of importance about each of those positions that we just talked about. Who's the current Speaker of the House that just got voted in again?
John Boehner.
John Boehner, right? So John Boehner's still the Speaker?
What is a